My son sent me a message that tore my soul apart. You are not invited to the launch. My partner thinks it is best. After I had invested $2 million in his company. After I had given him everything in life. Everything. My name is Odessa. I am 67 years old, and I truly believed I had seen everything this life could throw at me. But I never imagined that my own son, the child I sacrificed everything for, would write words so cold, so cruel, so heart-shattering. $2 million. Do you know what that means for a woman like me? It is the sale of my house. My mother's inheritance. The savings of 40 years of work, 12 hours a day cleaning office buildings downtown and caring for the elderly. It is every single dollar I saved by denying myself treats, vacations, and new clothes. It is my future, my old age, my peace of mind, all turned into numbers in a bank account with Lysander's name on it. And now, just 6 months after handing him that check, I received this message, sharp as a dagger lodged in my chest. My partner thinks it is best. As if I were an embarrassment. As if I were a burden. As if I were not the woman who brought him into this world and raised him alone after his coward of a father walked out on us. I read the message once, then twice, then 3 times. The words stay the same, but something inside me shifts. Something that had been asleep for years. Something buried under layers of unconditional love and maternal sacrifice. Vesper. That woman who has never once spoken directly to me. Who looks straight through me whenever I visit, as if I do not exist. The same woman who slowly poisoned my son's mind, whispering that his mother was too much, too present, too annoying. I remember the first time I saw her. Lysander invited me to see the company offices. He was so proud, so excited to show me what he had built with our investment. I arrived wearing a red dress I had bought especially for that day. Nervous, but proud. I wanted to make a good impression. Vesper greeted me with a forced smile, a weak, damp handshake, and then she erased me. Throughout the entire visit, she spoke only to Lysander, as if I were part of the furniture. When I asked about expansion plans, she answered with pure condescension, like I was a child who could not understand business. Silent investors generally do not participate in operational decisions, she said, with that small smirk I now hate remembering. Silent investor. That was what she wanted me to be. Someone who handed over money and stayed quiet. Someone who disappeared. And Lysander said nothing. He did not defend me. He did not correct her. He did not remind her that I was not just any investor, I was his mother. He just stood there, uncomfortable, as if my presence itself were inappropriate. That night, I cried in my bed, feeling small and humiliated. But I told myself it was a misunderstanding. I convinced myself things would improve with time. How naive I was. From that moment on, things only worsened. Lysander began canceling our Sunday dinners, the ones we had kept religiously for years. I'm sorry, Mama, I have an important meeting, he would say, and I could hear Vesper's voice in the background, directing him. Soon he stopped calling me every day like he used to. Then he stopped sharing his plans, his dreams. When I asked about the company, he answered in short, distant sentences, as if I were a stranger and not the woman who made it all possible. Vesper says it's better to maintain a certain professional distance, he explained once. Professional distance. From his own mother. Still, I waited. I believed that once the company succeeded, once it was stable, Lysander would remember who stood by him from the beginning. Who believed in him when no one else did. Now, sitting on the sofa in my small apartment, the same sofa where Lysander used to fall asleep during movie nights when he was little, those memories crash into me like an avalanche. I let the tears fall freely for the first time in months. I close my eyes and drift back in time. Back to when it was just the two of us against the world. Back to the day his father, Enoch, abandoned us without explanation, without goodbye, without even a note. Lysander was 5 years old. For weeks, he asked where his daddy was, why he wasn't coming home. I had no answers. I did not understand how someone could leave like that, leaving a family behind. I remember the nights I worked cleaning corporate offices until 3 in the morning after spending the entire day caring for Miss Hattie, an elderly woman with dementia who needed constant attention. I would come home exhausted, hands cracked from chemicals, and find Lysander asleep in my bed because he was scared to be alone. "Mama, why do you work so hard?" he would ask with those big, curious eyes. "So you can have everything you need, my baby," I would say, kissing his forehead as I carried him back to bed. And I meant it. When Lysander said he wanted to attend a private university, I knew I didn't have the money. But I took a second job on weekends, cleaning houses in the wealthy suburbs of Buckhead. My hands bled from scrubbing floors. My knees swelled from hours on them. But it was worth it when I saw his smile. "Seriously, Mama? I can study computer science?" "You can study whatever your heart desires, son. I'll handle the rest." And I did. For 5 years, I paid for that university. I sold my mother's jewelry. I pawned everything of value. I worked until my body ached in places I didn't even know existed. But I did it with love. With pride. With the certainty that I was investing in my son's future. The day Lysander graduated was the happiest day of my life. I watched him walk across that stage, receive his diploma, and I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you, Mama. All of this is because of you. I'm never going to forget it. Never going to forget it." What cruel irony. Then came the years of job hunting. Lysander had big dreams, but the market was unforgiving for a young black man, degree or not. I kept supporting him, his rent, his food, his expenses. Why? Because I believed in him. Because I knew one day, he would succeed. "Do not worry, son. Take the time you need. I am here." And I was always there. When he got his first low-paying job, I supplemented his salary so he could live with dignity. When he wanted to take a specialization course, I paid every cent. When he dreamed of starting his own business, I was the first person to support him. "Mama, I have a revolutionary idea," he told me one afternoon, his whole face lit up with that familiar energy he always had when he talked about technology. "But I need initial capital." "How much do you need?" I asked. "It's a lot of money, Mama." "I don't know if, tell me how much." "Millions. $2 million. Silence filled the room. Millions. It was everything I had and more. I would have to sell my house, the only security I had left. I would have to use my mother's inheritance, the money I had saved for my old age. I would have to liquidate my entire life. But when I looked into his eyes, when I heard the passion in his voice as he explained the project, when he told me he was going to change the world of technology, I did not hesitate for even 1 second. "All right, son. Count on me." His smile that day lit up the entire room. He hugged me the way he did when he was little, lifted me off the floor. Spun me around laughing. "You're the best mother in the world, Mama. I promise this will work. I promise I'll pay back every penny with interest. I promise I'll never forget what you're doing for me." Promises. All of them shattered now, like glass on the floor. I signed the papers. I transferred the money. I sold my house and moved into this small apartment. It's worth it, I told myself. It was for Lysander. For his future. For his dreams. The first few months after the investment felt like a honeymoon. Lysander called me every day to tell me about their progress. He sent me photos of the offices they had rented downtown. He introduced me through video calls to the employees they were hiring. I felt like I was part of something big, part of my son's dream. "Look, Mama, this is our boardroom," he would say, showing me a modern room with a long table and sleek chairs. "And this is where we work on the software development. Our company," he said. "Our project." I felt excitement like a little girl, imagining the day I would visit and see with my own eyes everything we had built together. Then Vesper appeared. At first, Lysander mentioned her as just another colleague. I hired a specialist in digital marketing, Mama. Her name is Vesper. She has a lot of experience. Soon, he mentioned her more and more. Vesper thinks we should focus on this sector. Vesper has important contacts. Vesper. The first time I saw her was during a video call. Lysander was showing me the new computers when she suddenly appeared on the screen. She was young, maybe 32, with sleek hair, perfectly styled, wearing a crisp white blouse. She looked polished, educated, successful. Everything I never was. Vesper, this is my mom, Odessa, Lysander said warmly. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Odessa. Lysander has told me a lot about you. Something in her tone unsettled me instantly. There was a coldness, a calculated distance, as if she were fulfilling an obligation. The pleasure is mine, I said. Lysander tells me you're very talented. I do what I can to help the company grow, she replied, then turned entirely to him. We need to review the ad campaign numbers before the 3 o'clock meeting. Just like that, she erased me. Lysander spoke to me for a few more minutes, but I could feel her impatience in the background, as if my presence was an interruption. That night, I barely slept. Something about that woman disturbed me, though I couldn't explain why. I told myself I was just being an overprotective mother and that I should be grateful my son had a capable partner. But the days that followed proved me wrong. Lysander began to change, subtly at first. His calls grew shorter, more formal. When I asked about the company, his answers were vague. How are sales going, son? Good, Mama. Everything's on track. And the product? Vesper is handling that. She knows more about marketing than I do. Always Vesper. One day, I decided to visit the office without warning. I wanted to surprise them, bring lunch, see how things were going. I wore my best dress, the emerald green one from Lysander's graduation. I fixed my hair and bought the sweet potato turnovers he loved so much. When I arrived, the receptionist looked at me with uncertainty. Do you have an appointment with Mr. Lysander? I'm his mother. I just wanted to say hello. She disappeared and returned 5 minutes later with Vesper. That woman walked toward me with firm, confident steps, like someone entering a battlefield. Mrs. Odessa, what a surprise. I brought lunch for Lysander and the team, I said, lifting the bag. How thoughtful. Unfortunately, Lysander is in a very important meeting with potential clients. He can't be interrupted. I can wait. I'm afraid the meeting will last several hours. It would be better if you coordinated your visits in advance. Coordinated my visits. As if I were a stranger. As if I were not his mother, not the woman who made that company possible. It will only take a minute, I insisted. She smiled, but it was cold and calculated. I understand your desire to be involved, but this is a serious business. Interruptions can be very costly when we're closing important contracts. I felt small. Ashamed. But what hurt the most was that Lysander never came out. Not even to say hello. Not to thank me for the lunch. He let me stand there while his partner dismissed me like an intruder. I understand, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please tell Lysander I stopped by. Of course. He'll call you later. He didn't. Not that night. Not the next day. 3 days later, when we finally spoke, his voice was distant. Mama, Vesper told me you went to the office. You know we're in a delicate phase right now. I need you to respect our work schedule. Our schedule, as if I were a stranger asking for favors, not the woman who had invested her entire net worth in that business. From that day on, the distance between Lysander and me turned into an abyss that widened every single week. Daily calls became weekly ones, then rare conversations squeezed in only when he had time. Our Sunday dinners, the sacred tradition we had kept since he was a boy, were cancelled again and again. I'm sorry, Mama, I have to work, he would say, always with the same excuse. Vesper scheduled a strategy meeting for Sunday. A strategy meeting. On a Sunday. The one day that had always been ours. Can't you do it another day, son? It's the only time we can all meet. Do you know how business works, Mama? No, I didn't know how business worked. I had spent my life cleaning, caring for the elderly, doing hard manual labor. I had never lived in a world of strategy meetings and PowerPoint slides. But I did know what it meant to sacrifice everything for family, something Lysander seemed to be forgetting very quickly. Months passed, and I became a spectator in my own son's life. I learned about the company's achievements through social media, not from him. I saw photos of team dinners, contract celebrations, business trips, and in every photo there was Vesper. Always Vesper, smiling beside Lysander like they owned the world. One night, scrolling through Facebook, I saw a picture that shattered me. Lysander sat in an elegant restaurant, raising a glass of wine. The caption read, "Celebrating the first million in sales with the best team in the world." 5 young, polished people sat at the table, and in the center, like a queen, was Vesper. My son had reached his first million, and I found out like a stranger online. He hadn't called me. He hadn't invited me. He hadn't thanked me for making it possible. That night, I cried until there were no tears left. The next day, I called him, pretending I hadn't seen anything. "Son, how's everything going at the company?" "Good, Mama. Everything's normal." "Any news you want to tell me?" An uncomfortable silence. "No, nothing special. Nothing special." The first million in sales, built on my life savings, was nothing special. "Lysander, I saw on Facebook that you celebrated something last night." Another silence, heavier this time. "Oh, that. It was just a small celebration with the work team." "And I'm not part of that team," I said quietly. "Mama, you're the investor." "It's different." The investor. I was no longer his mother, his partner in dreams. I was a line on a balance sheet. "Lysander, I'm not just any investor. I'm your mother. I invested everything because I believed in you." "I know, Mama, and I'm grateful. But Vesper says it's important to separate family roles from professional roles." Vesper again. Always Vesper deciding how I should be treated. "And what do you think, Lysander?" "I think Vesper is right. She has experience in these matters." That was the final stab. My son, the boy I had raised alone with love and sacrifice, was choosing a stranger's opinion over his mother's heart. The months that followed were a silent torture. Lysander contacted me only when absolutely necessary, always formal, always distant. My questions were met with vague answers. My visits were met with excuses. They were busy. Important clients. Special events Vesper had planned. Vesper had become the filter between my son and me, deciding when I could know something, when I could be included. And Lysander obeyed her like a child following a new authority. Desperate, I finally confronted him. "Lysander, we need to talk. I feel like you're pushing me out of your life." "Don't be dramatic, Mama. I'm just busy. It's more than work. It feels like I no longer have a place in your life." "That's not true." "Then explain why you tell me nothing, why our dinners are cancelled, why I find out about your success online." He sighed, irritated. "Mama, I'm not a child anymore. I have responsibilities. And I have the right to know how the company I financed with my life savings is doing." "Of course. You get the monthly reports. Financial reports. Cold numbers without soul, without context." "I don't want numbers, Lysander. I want you. I want to know how you feel, what scares you, what you dream about." "That's the problem," he snapped. "You confuse being an investor with being a mother. Vesper says that mix is toxic for the business." "Toxic? My love was toxic. Is that what she calls my love for you?" It's about professionalism. When did I disrespect your decisions? When I asked questions? When I showed up unannounced? When I acted like the owner? His words hit me like blows. I wasn't allowed to ask about the company I had built with my savings. Lysander, I invested $2 million. You receive your returns every month, he cut me off. What else do you want? I wanted my son. I wanted respect. I wanted to matter. I want you to treat me like your mother, not like a bank. Then stop acting like a creditor and act like a mother. The call ended with him hanging up. I sat alone in my small apartment, surrounded by photos of a boy who no longer existed. The boy who hugged me at graduation, who promised never to forget. The silence that followed was unbearable. No calls. No messages. No replies. It was as if I had been erased. But the company kept growing. I read the headlines online. Local tech startup reaches 3 million in sales. The perfect duo, Lysander and Vesper. The perfect duo. As if they had done it alone. As if they had risked everything. In interviews, Lysander spoke of sleepless nights and passion, but never of where the money came from. Never of me. I had been erased from his success story. One night, searching for news, I found a video interview. What was the hardest part of building your company? The journalist asked. Getting the initial investment, Lysander replied with that familiar smile. Vesper and I knocked on many doors. And how did you finally get the capital? He exchanged a look with Vesper. We were lucky to find an investor who believed in our vision. Someone who understood the potential of our project. An investor. A stranger who believed in their vision, not his mother, who had mortgaged her future out of love. Can you tell us who that visionary investor was? The journalist pressed. We prefer to keep that information private, Vesper said smoothly, stepping in with a diplomatic smile. Our initial investor prefers anonymity. Anonymity. They had turned their own mother into an anonymous investor. When the interview ended, something inside me broke for good. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was humiliation, betrayal, the unbearable feeling of being erased from the life of the person who mattered most to me. That night, I made a decision. I called Lysander and left a voicemail, because as always, he didn't answer. Son, I just watched your interview in Tech Weekly. I'm glad to know your anonymous investor is so satisfied with the results. I think it's time we have a serious conversation about the future of that investment. It was the first time in months I spoke firmly, not asking, but demanding. Lysander called the next day. His voice wasn't warm. It wasn't loving. It sounded like an irritated executive dealing with a minor inconvenience. Mama, I heard your message. What do you want to talk about? I want to talk about my place in your life and in your company. We already discussed that. You're an important investor. You receive your dividends. I don't want to be an anonymous investor, Lysander. I want to be recognized for what I am, your mother, and the person who made this company possible. There was a long silence. Then I heard Vesper's voice in the background. Tell her we're in an important meeting. And then my son said words I never thought I'd hear from him. Mama, Vesper is right. We're in a delicate stage of growth, and we can't let family issues interfere with the business. Family issues. I had become a problem to manage. After that call, I stayed in bed for 3 days. 3 days crying, replaying every memory, asking myself where I had failed as a mother. I looked in the mirror and saw a 67-year-old woman who had given her entire life to a son who now saw her as a burden. But on the 4th day, something changed. I got up. I showered. I dressed carefully. And I decided I was done begging for love. I wasn't going to beg for space in the life of someone who had already decided I didn't matter. I called my friend Odora, the only person who had stood by me through everything. Odora worked at the bank where I held my accounts. She was the one who processed the $2 million transfer. She had witnessed my sacrifice with her own eyes. Odora, I need to review all the documents from the investment I made in Lysander's company. Of course, Odessa. Is everything okay? No. But it's going to be. That afternoon, Odora came to my apartment carrying a thick folder, contracts, agreements, transfers, legal papers I had signed 6 months earlier, when I believed I was investing in my son's future, not funding my own disappearance. We reviewed every page carefully. The contract was clear. I had the right to withdraw my investment with 30 days' notice. I also had the right to audit the company's finances and participate in major decisions as a capital partner. Odora looked up at me after finishing. Legally, Odessa, you have a lot of power. You are the majority shareholder. Majority shareholder. I had almost forgotten. My $2 million gave me 60% of the company. Lysander and Vesper shared the remaining 40%. That means you control major decisions, she said. And without your approval, they can't move forward. If you withdraw your investment, the company likely won't survive. That night, I didn't sleep, but not because of sadness. For the first time in months, I felt clarity. I wasn't a helpless mother begging to be loved. I was a businesswoman with rights I had ignored while allowing them to erase me. The next day, I made the call that changed everything. Lysander, I need you to schedule an urgent meeting. We're reviewing the company's financials and discussing important changes. Mama, we're very busy this week. I'm not speaking to you as your mother. I'm informing you as the majority shareholder. This meeting is mandatory under our contract. Silence. He hadn't expected this version of me. Okay, he said finally. When? Tomorrow at 10. And I want Vesper there. Vesper? Why? Because she's been making decisions in my company without consulting me. That ends now. I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in years, strength. Not revenge. Respect. Recognition. That night, I prepared carefully. I reviewed every document, every report, every transfer. I wore my most formal suit, the black one I saved for important occasions, and applied my makeup with intention. I wasn't arriving as a wounded mother. I was arriving as the businesswoman I had always been. When I entered the office the next morning, the receptionist looked at me the same way she always had. Good morning. I'm Odessa, the majority shareholder. I have a meeting scheduled with Lysander and Vesper. The words majority shareholder changed everything. She straightened instantly and rushed to call them. Minutes later, Lysander and Vesper appeared. My son looked uneasy, unsure. Vesper kept her composure, but her eyes told me she wasn't ready for this version of me either. Mama, Lysander began. Odessa, I corrected. In this meeting, I am Odessa. Your business partner. We walked into the boardroom, the same room he once showed me with pride. But this time I wasn't a guest. I owned 60% of everything in it. I sat at the head of the table, exactly where I belonged. Lysander and Vesper sat across from me. For the first time in months, I was in control. Let's begin, I said, opening my folder. We have several issues to address. First, I continued, placing the documents on the table, I want a detailed explanation for why I have not been consulted on major decisions made over the last 3 months. Lysander exchanged a nervous glance with Vesper. Mama Odessa, I don't understand what you're talking about. I calmly took out a printed sheet and placed it on the table. According to these records, you hired 5 new employees, opened a second office, and signed an advertising contract worth $200,000, all without my approval. Vesper leaned forward with that patronizing smile I had grown to hate. Odessa, these are normal operational decisions. We don't need investor approval for every small expense. $200,000 is a minor amount. I looked straight into her eyes and replied quietly, and I am not the investors. I am the investor, the majority shareholder, holding 60% of the company. For the first time, Vesper's smile slipped. Lysander shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And there's more, I continued. I've reviewed your media interviews. Not once do you mention where the initial capital came from. You've turned me into an anonymous figure. We thought you'd prefer privacy, Lysander muttered. My privacy, or your comfort? My voice hardened. Because it's very convenient to create a story where the two of you are the only heroes. Vesper tried to regain control. Odessa, I understand that as Lysander's mother, you feel, stop right there, I cut her off. In this room, I am not Lysander's mother. I am his business partner, and I demand the respect that role deserves. A heavy silence filled the room. Lysander nervously spun a pen, avoiding my eyes. Vesper stayed composed, but I could see her calculating. Very well, she said at last. What do you propose? I propose 3 things. First, I am included in all major decisions from now on. Second, the public story about the company's origins is corrected. Third, I receive a detailed weekly report of all operations. That's micromanagement, Vesper objected. It's my right as the majority shareholder. And if you don't like it, you can buy my shares at market value. Lysander finally looked up. What would that be? I smiled. I'd done my homework. Based on your $3 million in sales and your own projections, my 60% is worth about $8 million. The color drained from Lysander's face. Vesper froze. 8 million, I repeated. You can pay me and keep the company, or accept my conditions and move forward with a partner who expects respect. We don't have 8 million, Lysander admitted quietly. I imagined as much. Then we'll have to learn to work together properly. That was when Vesper lost her composure. This is absurd. You're blackmailing your own son. I stood slowly, holding on to the calm I'd practiced all night. No, Vesper. This is a 67-year-old woman who has decided she will no longer allow herself to be treated like an idiot. Mama, please, Lysander said. You don't need to be so harsh. Harsh? I looked at him, sadness and resolve mixing inside me. For 6 months, you treated me like a nuisance. You let your partner disrespect me. You excluded me from celebrations. You erased me from interviews. And now that I demand basic respect, I'm the harsh one? He lowered his gaze. You have 2 choices, I said. Accept my conditions and we work as real partners, or I involve a lawyer and protect my investment by every legal means. Vesper stood abruptly. We need time. Of course. You have until tomorrow at 5. As I gathered my papers, Lysander spoke softly. Mama Odessa, would you really do this? Risk the company? I met his eyes. The man before me was 30, but I still saw the baby I once held, and the love and disappointment nearly tore me apart. I'm not risking anything. You're the ones who made me invisible. I'm only reminding you that I exist, that I have rights, and that I deserve respect. I walked to the door, then turned back once more. This isn't revenge. It's dignity. I left the office feeling something I hadn't felt in months, power. Not the power to hurt, but the power to defend myself. That night, Lysander called 3 times. I didn't answer. If he wanted to speak to me, it would be on business terms, with respect. The next day, 5 o'clock came and went. At 5:30, my phone rang. It was Lysander, and his voice was broken. Odessa, we need to talk. I'm listening. Can we meet? We've discussed your proposals. He sighed deeply. We accept. All of them. I felt both satisfied and deeply sad, satisfied because I'd reclaimed my place, sad because it took this much for my own son to see me. Tomorrow at 9, I said. Our first weekly meeting. And Lysander, I want Vesper present when you apologize. Silence. Apologize for 6 months of disrespect, for erasing me, for treating me like a nuisance instead of the person who made your dream possible. Tomorrow at 9, he whispered. That night, I slept better than I had in months, but my peace didn't last. The next morning, I walked into the office to find Lysander at reception, pale as a ghost. Odessa, we have a serious problem. What kind of problem? Vesper. She quit last night, and took 3 key employees with her. It felt like a punch to the stomach. What do you mean she took them? She started her own company. She offered higher salaries and took our CTO, our marketing manager, and our lead developer. Her office was empty, spotless, as if she'd never been there. And that's not all, Lysander said, his voice cracking. She took our 3 biggest clients. The contracts allowed her to take them if she left. I sat down slowly, absorbing it. What does this mean? We lost 70% of our revenue overnight. Without those employees, we can't finish our projects. It means, his voice broke, it means the company is bankrupt. Mama. After months of calling me Odessa, he finally said Mama again. But it came too late. How long do we have? I asked, surprised by my own calm. 2 weeks. After that, we can't pay anyone. I stood in silence, staring out the window of the dream I'd funded. Lysander cried quietly. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I let her disrespect you. I was blind. I finally turned to him. He looked less like a 30-year-old man and more like the 5-year-old boy who cried when his father left us. Lysander, there's something you need to understand. Vesper didn't do this last night. She had been planning it for months. He looked at me, confused and exhausted. What do you mean? Everything. Pushing me out of the company, making you believe I was the problem, making sure I had no access to daily operations. She was slowly manipulating you, keeping me away while she built her own network. Lysander lifted his head, his eyes red from crying. You knew? I didn't know exactly what she was planning, but I knew something was wrong. A woman doesn't treat her partner's mother that badly without hidden intentions. Then why didn't you tell me? I looked at him calmly. Would you have listened? For 6 months, every time I tried to get close to you, you chose Vesper's opinion over mine. Lysander stood up and began pacing the office like a trapped animal. So what do we do now? I can't ask you for more money. You've already lost enough because of me. I raised an eyebrow. Who said anything about losing money? He stared at me, stunned. Mama, the company is bankrupt. You lost your investment. Lysander, there's something Vesper never understood, and something you forgot too. What? I'm not just an investor with money. I'm a woman who worked for 40 years. A woman who knows the value of effort, of sacrifice. Of building something from nothing. I stood up and walked toward him. Vesper took employees and clients, yes. But she didn't take your talent. She didn't take your knowledge. And she certainly didn't take your mother. He shook his head slightly. I don't understand. We're going to rebuild this company, Lysander. But this time, we'll do it right. As real partners. As family. For the first time in months, I saw hope in my son's eyes. You'd really do that? After everything I did to you? I shook my head gently. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for us. Because you finally learned to value what you have, and I finally learned to demand the respect I deserve. 6 months after that conversation in the empty office, I'm sitting on the terrace of my new apartment, the one I was able to buy after our rebuilt company surpassed last year's sales. I sip my morning coffee while reviewing the weekly financial report Lysander sends me faithfully every Monday. Our company, because now it truly is ours. After Vesper left, Lysander and I worked for 3 weeks straight, 18 hours a day. He handled the technical side. I used my 40 years of experience dealing with people to bring in new clients. It turns out a 67-year-old woman who has worked her whole life knows a lot about customer service, about building real relationships, about earning trust. The first time I joined Lysander for a sales presentation, he was nervous. Mama, these executives are very corporate. I smiled, adjusting my mint green blazer. Son, I've spent 40 years convincing difficult people to trust me. From grumpy old men to demanding bosses. This isn't so different. And I was right. While Lysander explained the technical details, I connected with the clients as people. I asked about their frustrations, their real needs, what they truly wanted to achieve. I didn't talk about features. I talked about solving real problems. At the end of that meeting, the client not only signed the contract but recommended us to 3 other companies. I've never seen such a human approach in a tech company, he told us later. That night, Lysander hugged me like he hadn't in years. Mama, you're incredible. Vesper would never have gotten that account. Vesper knew technology, I replied. But she never understood that business is done between people, not machines. The months that followed were full of growth. We hired new employees, but this time I took part in every interview. We wanted people who shared our values: respect, honesty, teamwork. No toxic egos. No manipulation. No making anyone feel invisible. Lysander changed completely. Now he calls me every day, not out of duty, but because he genuinely wants to share his life with me. Our Sunday dinners returned, stronger than ever, because now we talk as partners, as family, as equals. Do you know what I regret the most? He told me one night. Letting Vesper convince me that your love was a weakness. It wasn't your fault, son. She was very skilled at manipulation. No, Mama. It was my fault. I chose to listen to her instead of my heart. I thought success meant distancing myself from you instead of building with you. A month ago, we received a call that made us laugh until we cried. It was one of the employees who had left with Vesper. Would you consider taking me back? Her company isn't doing well, and I miss the family atmosphere you have. Lysander looked at me before answering. What do you think, partner? I smiled. Second chances must be earned. Let him start from the bottom and prove he understands our values. Today, that employee is one of our most loyal, always saying he's never worked anywhere he felt so respected. Last week, a business magazine asked for an interview about our success. When the journalist asked about our beginnings, Lysander didn't hesitate. It all started with my mother, Odessa. She didn't just invest money in my dream. She invested her trust, her experience, her love. Without her, none of this would exist. The article was published under the title, "The Mother-Son Duo Revolutionizing the Tech Sector with Family Values." This morning, as I drink my coffee and review the numbers, I think about everything we built, not just a company, but a relationship stronger than ever. Lysander learned that success without family is empty. I learned that love without respect is not love at all. My phone rings. It's Lysander, as always. Good morning, partner. Did you see this week's numbers? Good morning, son. Yes. Another excellent week. You know what? I think it's time to expand internationally. What about exploring the London market? I smile, looking at the skyline from my terrace. I think it's an excellent idea. But this time, let's choose partners who understand that business is built on respect, not manipulation. Always, Mama. Always. After the call ends, I stay on the terrace a little longer, feeling the breeze. I think about the woman I was a year ago, begging for love, allowing herself to be invisible, doubting her worth. She no longer exists. In her place stands Odessa, businesswoman, partner, respected mother. A woman who learned it's never too late to claim the place you deserve. And the most beautiful part is that I didn't just recover my son, I recovered him as an equal, with mutual respect and real love. Today, I don't need permission to live. I don't need permission to be happy. I am exactly who I was always meant to be. This wasn't revenge. It was liberation. 1 year later, I stand in front of my bedroom mirror, getting ready for a special night. Our company is about to receive the Innovation with Human Values Award at the National Entrepreneurs Gala. I put on my gold dress, bought just for this moment. It's more than a professional celebration. It's the celebration of a woman who learned to shine after years in the shadows. Lysander arrives in his new car, but before we leave, he insists on taking a photo together in my living room. To remember this moment, Mama. To remember everything we achieved together. As we drive to the hotel, I think about how much has changed. 50 employees. Offices in 3 countries. And a culture of respect that defines us. Nervous? Lysander asks as we park. Not at all, I reply with a smile. I don't get nervous anymore when I know I deserve to be exactly where I am. In the hotel lobby, business people, journalists, and government officials greet us warmly. Many come to congratulate us, but what touches me the most is when a young businesswoman comes directly to me. Mrs. Odessa, I read your story in the magazine. I wanted to thank you for showing that it is never too late to demand respect. My mother-in-law was going through something similar with her family, and your example gave her the courage to stand up for herself. Moments like this mean more to me than any award, knowing my story can help other women find their strength and their voice. During dinner, the presenter tells our story, how a tech company founded by Lysander and his mother Odessa proved that business success and human values can not only exist together but make each other stronger. When they call us to the stage to receive the award, Lysander gently takes my arm. You go first, partner. Without you, I wouldn't be here. We walk up together, but he hands me the microphone for the acceptance speech. I look at the audience, at all those successful people, and for a moment I remember the woman I was 2 years ago, insecure, asking for small crumbs of affection, allowing herself to be treated as invisible. Good evening, I begin with a steady voice. This award is not just recognition for our company. It is recognition for all the women who have learned that real love is built on respect, not silent sacrifice. The room becomes quiet, every word heard. For many years, I believed that being a good mother meant accepting everything, forgiving disrespect, always being available without expecting anything back. But I learned that this is not love. This is emotional dependence. I see Lysander beside me, smiling with real pride. True love, between family, between partners, between any human beings, is built on mutual respect. When we demand respect, we are not being selfish. We are teaching others how to value us. Some people in the audience nod, especially women my age. Today, our company is successful not despite family values, but because of them. When we treat every employee like family, respect every idea, and value experience as much as youth, we create something stronger than a company. We create a community. Applause fills the room, but I continue. To the women of my generation who may be listening, it is never too late to claim the place you deserve. To the children here, your mothers are not banks or domestic servants. They are people with wisdom, experience, and rights. And to all entrepreneurs, success without human values is empty. Success with family is lasting. This time the applause is long, standing, and emotional. Lysander hugs me on stage and whispers, "Thank you for teaching me that respect is not begged for, it is demanded." After the ceremony, during the reception, I go to the restroom to touch up my makeup. In the mirror, I see a completely different woman than the one I was 2 years ago, not because of the elegant dress or professional makeup, but because of the light in her eyes, the straight posture, and the calm smile of someone who truly knows her worth. An older woman approaches me. "Excuse me, are you Odessa from Tech Family?" "Yes, that's me. My name is Gloria. I am 70 years old, and I just watched your speech on the screens. I called my son to tell him I want to be part of his business, not just the grandmother who watches the grandchildren for free." My eyes fill with tears. "Gloria, you are worth far more than they ever made you believe. Claim your place." She asked me softly if it was too late. I smiled and told her, at 67 I rebuilt my entire life, and at 70, she was only just beginning. When I returned to the reception, Lysander introduced me to other entrepreneurs as his partner and mentor. Not as his mother who invested in the company, but as his equal, his business companion. At the end of the night, on our way home, Lysander told me something I will carry in my heart forever. Mama, I used to think I succeeded despite family problems. Now I know I succeeded because I learned to value my family. And I answered him gently, being a mother does not mean disappearing as a person, it means growing alongside our children and demanding respect along with love. That night, lying in my bed, I didn't think about the award or the contracts waiting for us tomorrow. I thought about all the women who, like Gloria, discovered that it is never too late to demand respect, to shine with their own light, to build relationships based on equality instead of sacrifice. I realized that today I am exactly who I was always meant to be. Odessa. Businesswoman. Respected mother. A complete woman. And tomorrow I will continue to be her, because I no longer need anyone's permission to be happy. This was my liberation. This is my new life. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed it, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your kind support. I look forward to reading your comments. On the screen, you'll see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's much more on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.